to another episode of Parallel Barking. I'm Ariana Backer, bark
And
bark,
I'm Larry Backer, woof woof.
and today we are talking
You know
about,
what? You cannot speak anymore.
oh,
No, you cannot speak anymore. You cannot speak until
Zoo!
you're spoken to. And then you
Oh,
have to speak
oh,
nice
I
to
see.
me.
I
You have to
see.
speak nice to me.
Tell me why.
No, you cannot speak. I haven't given you permission to speak yet.
Well, this isn't going to be a fun podcast.
It's going to be great for me.
That's like your dream.
Not really. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So today we're talking about the war on women, or put a different way, because that sounds like we're prejudiced
Mm.
in favor of women or some conception of the role of women. Putting aside for a second footnote the because one now must say this, what a woman is and how one identifies as a woman
Oh
uh,
my goodness.
is problematic here, but hardly problematic in the places that we're going to talk about.
Right.
So,
So,
so what we're going to talk about, it's not necessarily a war on women, but certainly over the entire globe,
well,
off and on, there'll be spots. There seems to be an effort by society, sometimes with the acquiescence of women or females, however they're defined in that context, and sometimes not, uh, of redefining the roles of women
well,
within society. I'm trying to be nice and
well,
be neutral.
this I think this definitely restricts their movement and restricts.
Well, we don't know what this is yet, and we're going to be doing a bunch. So what has got our bee in our bonnet? Bees in our bonnet? I guess no one wears a bonnet anymore, and bees are
Particularly,
all dead. Um, it's we are back to Afghanistan.
right.
We
The Taliban recently issued a ban on Afghan women working for
wait. Did I give you permission to speak?
United Nations. Continuing on, there had been previously the Taliban in December
Yeah, it was
of
in December.
2021 or 2022.
No, 20. No, I think it was this past December.
They had issued a ban for workers for all NGOs, but that had
It was in foreign and in foreign organizations,
right, but
for national and international non-governmental organizations.
and the UN was exempt from that, but this does not seem to be so for in this
Well,
case.
right. Apparently, there was a move to ban women in December. Some of the international people, well, many of the international NGOs found that an impossible situation, suspended their operations. But the UN went and they got a winky winky from the Afghan leadership saying, "Oh, when we said international organizations and NGOs, we didn't mean the UN." So Afghan women can continue working. And then, given the nature of rule of law in Afghanistan, apparently one morning those who make up the leadership core of the state said, "Oh, no, 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 we changed our minds," or "We never really said what we did,"
That
or
really
whatever it was they
wasn't
said.
exactly what we meant,
Right, right.
or that was only potentially for a small amount of time.
But at the end of the day, they banned women from working in UN offices, and the UN, of course, coordinates a lot of aid in Afghanistan, and aid is vitally needed.
To how
So,
many? About 23 million people. It's not too a small amount. I mean, this is
well,
like
no, no, 23 million people who may be in need of aid, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the international outcry was both pathetically ineffective and ritualistically unsurprising. The UN Secretary General whined. The UN human rights mechanisms and their portavoz, how do you say, their spokespeople all said this is horrible. They're violating basic rights. no shock. The shock is that the Taliban actually let women continue to work as long as
That
they
is
please.
exactly what I was going to say. Why are we shocked that my shock is that this went on for as long as it did. I am shocked that the Taliban even had communicated with the United Nations at all.
Well, I mean, they really are in need of aid. The traditional mechanics
I know
of,
beggars can't be choosers kind of thing, but
well, they're not begging so much anymore. How do we put this euphemistically? They're reorienting their donor class. And during that period of transition from getting money from one group of outsiders to another group of outsiders, all of whom believe that they can somehow use the Afghans for whatever geostrategic purposes they think they want, either through a Silk Road or through the advance of the development of a nicer, kinder, more Western oriented liberal democratic Islam. It doesn't really matter. Money is money, whatever it looks like. But there's this period of transition. And the traditional sources of the Taliban revenues, at least before the they were ousted in by the after the 9/11 attack, poppies and the drug trade, as well as payments for harboring all kinds of people and groups, et cetera, doesn't seem to be as valuable or as lucrative or as well established as it was. So but they need to feed people. And at the same time,
so
right,
why is this move
none of this
then?
is a surprise. We had what, 10 years? No, we had longer than that before they were ousted. We know what the Taliban is. We know how they work. We know
Mhm.
what their mindset is, and we know what their relationship to
Right.
women is.
Well, my question is actually why now? Why specifically now was the move to ban, and why not earlier? Why was there a wait, and why specifically now? Was there a catalyst? Um,
Yeah, it's not clear. I mean, I sort of hinted a little bit, but I'm again, I'm completely speculating. One of the things is they've been slowly, I mean, this is for women, it's death by 1,000 little blows. They've been slowly moving women out of public life.
well, right,
In
they
fact, but a step at a
are
time,
barred
and
from
this may just be
schools and
right.
universities, and they're not allowed to work in certain areas of Afghanistan.
Right. They may not be allowed out without a male escort, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. Right. But none of this, of course, is a shock. 20 years ago, this was Afghanistan. And that anyone believed that when the Taliban came back, that they weren't just going to pick up where they left off. I'd really like to know what they're smoking, because I'm sure it's illegal in every country on earth.
Mhm.
On the other hand, it has projected them into some kind of space-time continuum that is about as far from reality as I can imagine. And yet here we are. A lot of it is narrative building. I mean, if at its most cynical, the international community saw this coming, and this worked to everyone's advantage. The UN has a campaign and NGOs, of course, have a campaign to protect marginalized groups, and especially women in developing and post-colonial states. And what better way to get rich people from rich countries to continue to donate and get themselves outraged enough to volunteer than to have yet another defeat. So to some extent,
That's
it is
scandalous.
well, no, it's business. It is possible, and this one is an easy one because there is nothing anyone could do. Right. I
Well,
guess
right. I mean,
at the
you're
margins,
acting. I mean, yeah, you almost said that as if somebody could control the outcome of
and
of.
they might have at the edges, but at the end of the day, you knew what you were buying. The Biden administration anyway did. The multilateral rules-based order folks, the defenders of liberal democracy, who just had a summit for democracy in Washington. They're very good at optics. They're very good at speaking, but that's the problem when you have academics, policy people, and consultants running your government. They're very good at the theatrics, but delivery, they knew exactly what was going to happen when they left. They knew exactly how this country was going to go, and everything else is narrative building, and you might as well exploit it. And I'm being very cynical, and I'm sure none of this is true, and everyone is working from the purest of motivation, so I apologize to them all.
Oh, you are
But one,
so right. Yes, good
but
job.
one can't help but thinking, and then we can put this in a broader context. Right. The Taliban are, of course, the poster children for for what couldn't be any further from the liberal democratic ideal if you work very hard to construct it. I mean, you've got
Yes,
it. But they, by focusing on them, we're also missing perhaps a larger point. So here's my larger point.
let's hear it.
All right. Simultaneously with all of this, in China, we have a new, and we spoke about this earlier, and they're all not the same exact thing, but it goes to my larger point that there seems to be a broad global effort to redefine the role, nature, and expectations of women within society. All right, so I'll start with the Chinese, but I'm going to do the Americans too, so hang on. The Chinese, several months ago, redid their gender equality law, and it was formal gender equality in the workplace, no problem.
Remember
But
when we talked about
yeah,
that?
remember, right? But in the context of women's traditional role, right? And that made everyone crazy. Well, it made
Right.
people crazy, right? At the same time, we have the abortion decision in this country, and you just mentioned this before we got on to the podcast. The recent decision, and there have been decisions all over the
Oh,
place,
there are many
right?
decisions going
But
on in the US right now.
right, but my favorite is one you just mentioned, which is what? I love your reaction to it.
Oh, well, because there were so many. I don't know. Well, the one,
Texas judge, dude.
oh, yes, the um national injunction against the abortion pill.
See,
Uh,
I always like when little people take weapons that are well beyond their capacity and then do it. In the old days, a federal judge would think long and hard before they would extend a mandate nationally. Now it seems that there isn't a single, in this case, man I'm assuming he identifies as a man, but who knows, that a man in black will think nothing of saying, oh, I've had this decision. I'm a federal judge. Oh, I'll tell you what, let me share this with everyone else in the US, including all of my
right?
brother
It
and
was
sister
a
judges.
little bit arbitrary, just a little
No,
bit.
no,
Let me
it's
just
not.
tell the FDA that I don't think they did their due
No,
diligence.
that wasn't arbitrary. I will disagree with you here. The arbitrary part,
Oh
and
no,
it
I
wasn't
do think that
arbitrary. No,
this
that's
judge has
actually interesting.
nothing to do with scientific. This judge has no idea.
No, that's something else. What they're doing, there are multiple vectors going on. What irritates you, and quite rightly, is a process that began with the Trump administration by the Democrats, now taken up by the Republicans in the Biden administration. There's this, in a sense, this revolution in administrative law and in the way in which judges tend to view the nature, role, and exercise of authority by administrative agencies. The jurisprudence of that is worth another podcast, but I don't want to go there just yet because I want to focus on women here as women, right? The thing that was more troubling, and he's just one example of many, is the way in which judges have lost all sense of discretion or all sense of a kind of restraint when it comes to taking their decision, especially at a district court level. As soon as they come up with some decision that they know is going to be significant or significantly controversial, they just can't help themselves. They have the self-control of a toddler.
Yes,
They
it
can't
was
help themselves.
interesting.
They are going to make this
You're
national
right.
without even thinking, and that is reprehensible.
That whole attitude is kind of what all of this news and these decisions feel like. Yes, it just seems like a
Me.
really reactive,
Right.
like,
But anyway, we're being sidetracked.
I need to fix this somehow, so I'm gonna go nuts and
Yeah, it's the judge's hero, and they really have to get over themselves. You are a steward of a small part of the national fabric of political life. Get over yourself. You are not a superhero. This is a problem with superhero movies. You're not a superhero. You're certainly not God's prophet on earth.
yeah, you
Whether
are not
the
some
first, second, or third testaments, get over yourself
moral
and have the
demigod.
kind of humility that you should have brought to your office. But that from the larger point. So we're seeing, so we've got Afghanistan, we got China, we got the US, where again women's roles are being redefined, and each of them in a nationally contextually appropriate way. So how do the Americans do it? They do it through this endless chatter in their judiciary. How do the Chinese do it? Through a centralized coordinating statutory body. How do the Afghans do it? By rethinking their version of Islam and their sense of what the Ummah suggested is that the people suggests or that context in which all of these things are appropriate. Each of this is fairly arrogant. In the case of Afghanistan, unbelievably un-Islamic, but their arrogance is no different from anyone else's. And then, of course, we have their neighbors, their Shia neighbors to the south. What's going on there in Iran?
Oh, right. They've decided the leadership in Iran has decided that it would be a great idea to put cameras in public places to catch women who are not wearing the hijab and following the religious law.
Bravo. And that one is a gift that keeps on giving. So
Correct.
not only can you catch women who are not wearing their head coverings, whichever one the Iranians believe is appropriate, and they can always change their minds. As you know, there's a number, four, I think, or five big categories. I lose track, and they're different somewhere else, and then variations. But you can also do all kinds of other things. You can catch people smooching.
You can do so many things and
You can
call it
catch people. That's right.
whatever you want.
So this is a gift that keeps on giving, but in this case, it's a gift that is first given to women.
To women,
Right.
and it's because of women. You can blame it all on women.
Well,
But
you have to. You have to. We all you know that it's always
it's always been, and it
you
always will be.
you see how strong and powerful you are. That is
And
why
I thank you for
we
explaining that
poor
to
weak
me.
men have to um tie you up, contain you, take off your shoes. And why are you still talking without me giving you permission?
You're right. I don't know.
We have to
You
send you
should
to
continue talking over me.
I know, I have to, because, and even then I'm drowned out by your superior voice.
That's Ethel Merman for you.
Oh my God. We're going to have our listeners scrambling to Google to figure out
Yes,
who Ethel
go
Merman is.
Google that. Google that.
And I'm actually in shock that you remember.
Yes.
Oh, good Lord. But yeah, so all kinds of interesting things going on there. And of course, we still have the old standbys everywhere else. Violence against women, especially in domestic settings, and a number of other areas. And of course, what for me is the most fascinating thing of all, and I'm not sure which way the trajectories work, but I'm only going to mention it. This is subject of another and much more sensitive podcast. The very categorization of women is also now being redone, the trajectories and consequences of which remain at best hazy. And so you've got a context in which for I don't know how many centuries there's been a kind of more or less acceptance based on biology, based on whatever it is. I mean, and it'll be based on a million different things depending on who you talk to, right? Men and women, whatever was categorized as men were given some political, social, and cultural privileges. Whatever was categorized as women was not, was given something else. And it'll be different in among African peoples and Asian peoples and Europeans and the like, but roughly there'll be this division. And now the women have come, especially through Anglo-European liberal democratic societies, mounted at least in its modern form, a 2-century campaign for equality, however you define this. And at the cusp of victory, more or less, the very notion of maleness and femaleness is now open for business. And so,
Yeah,
what
it's very interesting you say that, because when you talk to younger folks, the idea of you know, male, female, or sexuality, just, you know, straight, gay, heterosexual, homosexual, those are concepts that we've, you know,
pansexual,
we've created for, you know, ourselves, just to categorize and make things easier, but they mean nothing. They're meaningless
what do you
to,
mean we? What do you mean we? We were born into this and socialized into systems, and
of
then there
course,
were a number of great people.
absolutely, we meaning the collective we.
Okay,
Don't get so defensive.
defensive.
But
And this is why we don't let you speak without permission.
right. But it's actually, I mean, there's really no reason or necessity to define one or the other, you know.
Right. Well, number one, but even more important, there's no reason necessarily to have as a consequence all kinds of legal, social, and
Exactly. I
other
mean, yeah,
consequences
that's
to whatever categorization it is
exactly.
you want to come up with. At the same time, there's no reason either that we can't respect social collectives that have a different view. And who,
Absolutely.
if people want to go in on a consensual basis, want to establish their own normative basis. Oh, but now we
But
go
then
down.
that's what you talk about human rights, right?
Well, yeah, but now we start down the dark road, right? Because
Right?
if we do this and it's all consensual, that path can lead us back to the Taliban.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the
Uh,
different ideas about what human rights are, and I know that's a very controversial thing to say, but
well, no, we're gonna get there. No, it's actually one that's up for a very lively debate. Certainly not a lively debate among the keepers of liberal democratic orthodoxy, but outside of the heartland of the current Orthodox project, the issue is very, very much up for debate.
mhm.
But that brings us back to our friends, the the Taliban. To their credit, to their credit, and at least for a day, it looks like the Afghan men who are working for the UN in Kabul also stayed home in solidarity with their female colleagues. On the other hand, they got to eat, and they also don't want to wind up at some stadium in Afghanistan either getting flogged or beheaded. And so there's only so much you can do. At the end of the day, these women they will have the traditional choices that Afghan women have had certainly since the Taliban period, which is either to flee or to whatever they think, to conform, at least outwardly.
I mean, it's a little, it's just, it's disappointing for obviously all the people going through the crisis and going through that. When you're losing half of your workforce, it's obviously not good for an economy that's already struggling. Um, I just don't see how these laws and regulations are benefiting anything besides
Well, you're thinking like a product of an apex political state in the liberal democratic camp, and correctly so. The Afghan leaders. I'm not now. Notice I'm not saying the Afghan people. The Afghan leaders who also purport to be religious leaders.
that's what I'm
Who,
saying. I mean, this is really only for
well, from their perspective, this makes absolutely
it
perfect
makes
sense.
complete sense, but if if people are dying,
Then it is the will of God. And of course, now
that's
you
always
see
what you can
that was
say.
perfect. That was perfect. Your silence was perfect because indeed the way I
You
said
didn't
it
hear
in
my
the
sigh?
yeah, I got your side, but we chose not to hear it.
Right.
Uh, you know, can God hear the lamentations of sighing
Stop.
women?
Stop. Stop.
But the problem by saying it's the will of God, of course, is the same thing as what was it people were saying when people were a little bit uneasy about the Trump indictment, that no person is above the law. The problem with those little pithy things is that they are conversation enders, and yet they get you nowhere. Right. In the case of the Trump thing, it doesn't really matter whether everyone can agree that no one should be above the law, but that's not the issue. The issue there is the very curious exercise in prosecutorial discretion. In this case, it is true that God's will is in everything. At the same time, God judges bad acts and good. And so it may be God's will to expose the barbarity and the heresy, the un-Islamic conduct of these people, and to teach his people a lesson that may, in this case, be drawn in blood. But notice what happens when you go down this road. It's like, oh my God, what is coming out of your mouth?
You can say anything. I mean, it's you know, it's whatever you want it to be. You can make your reality whatever you want it to be.
All right. So now you've heard all of this, and you're sitting here. What do you do?
I angrily condemn.
So you're going to write a nasty letter to whom? To someone
Right.
who's not
I'm
going to
gonna
read
be
it?
like the chief of the UN, and I'm going
Oh, but you ain't getting FaceTime.
to angrily condemn the Taliban for their awful decision.
That's true. You can do that. I mean,
I
but
will send more foreign female UN workers into Afghanistan.
okay.
Although
And then what are you going to do when they are meddled?
rejected by
Well, not only rejected, what happens if they're on the street and bad things happen to them?
exactly. Well,
Is that the predicate for reinvading Afghanistan again?
yes, then we'll use that. This is kind of like this is our proof that we need
What more proof do we there's no proof here. What kind of proof are you looking for of what?
to go in and
Oh my God, no, no. No, we've been down that road. The Americans don't have the stomach for this. Neither does anyone else. Um, but there may be some other things that
I was gonna say go in and provide more aid. I wasn't gonna say actually I don't want to I don't want to do that again. No.
um, yeah, no, and that's a problem. But they're kind of unorthodox things that one can do too. This is at the level at which it's being done. If we follow the narrative, right? This is an Islamic conversation. And one of the things that it may be worthwhile to encourage at this point is an Islamic conversation. One of the most interesting things, for example, is that some of the people who were criticizing the actions of the Afghan state the theocratic state was the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who viewed this as bad. It is one of the things that I find very interesting here is the extraordinary silence among the clerics and other leaders, even in theocratic states, about what the Afghan leadership is doing in the name of what they purport to be their understanding,
Well, do you
communication,
want
and
to, do you
interpretation
think,
of religion.
do you think it's because they want to see if it'll pass?
Now, who knows? Who knows why? But the silence is actually quite interesting. But it is a religious conversation to some extent, and perhaps that is something that maybe you know it would be useful if it were encouraged. But certainly, the last people on earth who'd be able to encourage this are people who are not Muslims,
I
right?
mean,
And
to
so to
me,
say this
silence
is
is
to say very
implicit
little. You can't, it's like
acceptance.
saying, we really don't like the Catholic position on priest celibacy. So what we should do is get, I don't know, let's get the Shinto priest to host or to try to encourage the Catholics to talk about priestly celibacy, and the Catholics would look at the Shinto and say, really, seriously? It's got to come from inside. Although it's one that really begs that kind of one would think, beg that kind of discussion. And the answer may be the establishment or the interlinked or non-interlinked network of imams and other authoritative speakers for religion may think that this is cool or acceptable, and that would be useful
So
to
you're
know.
thinking that other leadership, Islamic leadership, should be speaking out
Well,
more.
it would be, well, it's interesting. It is, I am the last person on earth to suggest that anyone should do anything, but I do note that they aren't is interesting and may, I think, in, may fairly be considered when other people then begin to look at this so that they can judge their own conduct and their own standards about what it is they should be doing. One of the problems here, of course, is the one that you mentioned. You've got 23 million people who are held hostage by a state, but this isn't either the first or last state to do that. And so you don't really want to make the lives of 23 million people worse, even though you cannot in good conscience be complicit in the actions of this of what may be a questionably theocratic decision. And maybe that's sort of, this is my insight, my woof insight, which is for those of us who are not Muslim, who are looking at this and who have certain views about the nature and role of women, even within a contextually defined space, in the face of this decision, perhaps the touchstone of analyzing the nature of reaction ought to be one of complicity. That is, and we've done this, for example, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund has developed a notion about complicity in the context of administering its sovereign wealth fund with respect to investments or operations in Myanmar, which they view as an illegitimate government. And it goes something like this: if you do anything that facilitates the continued operation and authority of that leadership, then you have crossed the line from engaging in interactions with the people to becoming complicit in the human rights violations of the state. And so the question for most everyone outside of Afghanistan would have to be, is my engagement in any activity, whether it's direct or indirect, does that make me directly or indirectly complicit in facilitating or making it possible for this government to continue to do those things that we in our own world find absolutely reprehensible.
Right, because the reality is the Taliban isn't recognized as a legitimate government, and
Well, yeah,
we we should be. I mean, I know, and the other reality is the safety of the 23 million people that are in that country, and
right.
actually trying to manage that situation.
Right. But even if the government were quote unquote legitimate, and to some extent it is legitimate, in the sense
Right, who cares
legitimate,
about
legitimate, but de facto in
recognition?
power.
Mhm.
Right. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the violation. What matters is the violation, and therefore complicity in continuing to support the operations or facilitating the continued existence and operations of the state. And that's what I got. But it's a very curious time for women right now, and something that I think that even 10 years ago would not have been foreseen in is the trajectory appeared to be globally that women were moving forward, however that's judged, in a particular direction, which was viewed as good. That's what I got. Woof woof.
It seems like all of the movements toward and decisions about women around the world right now are extremely erratic and somewhat troubling and dangerous. Um,
Wow. And given what you really think, that was incredibly tactful.
so I think everyone should be diligent, keep their eyes open, ears
And
open,
avoid complicity.
and avoid complicity. Absolutely. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Woof woof.
Bark, bark.